I'm Adam Camilleri and welcome to episode 7 of Gaming Against the Grain. This is a Warhammer 40k podcast which tries to make uncompetitive armies work. An overview of today's episode. We will be covering listener questions. I've got 2 army lists for review. I've got Lords of War format, which is a event in Brisbane I'm attending this weekend. I'm going to go over my army list for that event. I'm going to explain the units I'm choosing. And then I'm going to go over my last topic, which is starting a game with a view to win it. So that's the things you can do during the first phases of the game to set up, hopefully, for a win. So first and foremost, we're up to listener questions. And Mark Deal asks, how do you stop yourself feeling demoralized when you know you've been given the ultimate bad matchup and that you know you can't win? So this is something that is really tough. And if you're a competitive player or a tournament player, this is going to happen to you at some point. At some point, sooner or later, you're going to come up to your, perfect matchup. The one you dread, the one you know you've got a really low chance of winning, if maybe possibly 0 chance of winning. Rock, paper, scissors is kind of what I call this, and it's totally a thing in 40k, as it's always been out there in different levels, and towards the end of 7th edition, it was more apparent than ever. Like, there was just some armies you couldn't beat with some armies. Like, if I was to take a standard all-comers list, like what I describe in other podcasts, something with different layers of threats and obsec and stuff, and you took that and you tried to go up against one of those bark stars, which has re-rollable invulnerable saves and feel no pains, and it's only 6s to hit them because of invisibility, and they can hit and run and they control the entire board. You just can't win. There's pretty much like no fucking chance of winning that game, and that's hard to deal with, and it's really bothersome. It can get under your skin if you let it. So let's say you rock up to a table and you're looking across at the big baddie, the thing that's going to undo your army list. It just counters you. It turns you off. It just kills it. Ask yourself this: is this built upon personal experience or the opinions of others? If it's the first one and it's built on your personal experience and you've had your ass handed to you many times with this type of army again and again, then you have an amazing opportunity to try something off the wall bonkers you never fucking tried before. You know you're boned, so all the expectations are gone and the pressure is off. There's no need to get demoralized. You already know the outcome. So stuff it. There's no reason not to have fun now. If this is happening to you, try using units in a way you've never done before. Move in advance with your entire gun line. Assault with Tau. You never know. You might just rattle your opponent enough to get some extra points out of the game. Fuck with them. To try something off the wall bonkers you've never done before. There's no reason not to. If you know you're going to get your ass handed to you, and you've had like a game plan in mind, you just wasn't quite sure if it's ever going to work, this is the game to try it. You never know. You might just surprise yourself. If it's the second option, and this belief that you're fucked is based on the opinions of others, it's time to learn. Once again, you're free from expectation of victory, and there's no need to play hard or a nail-biter game. Get your best game plan together and execute it. See how the army you're facing responds. See how long you can last, and do your best to get every possible point from that game that you can. If that means foregoing an entire shooting phase to get 4 units on an objective, so you might have 1 extra point at the end of the game, do it. Every point you get out of a curve stomping is a badge of pride you can wear into the next game. And playing this way will expose ways to make your army better, because if it's certain that you lose to some list, then there's obviously some weakness in your army that you need to look at. Whether that's sheer power level or it's an inability to score enough points, whatever it is. Getting your ass kicked can be a good thing. And finally, like every game of 40k is a chance to learn something. And from personal experience, I learn 100 times more from losing than winning. When I get my ass kicked, I learn so much more. And it's only from losing that I've been able to get better at the game. So yeah, hope that answered the question, Mark, and hope that was some help to you. Next question is from a gentleman named Dwayne Woods, and he asks, Adam, can anyone make Vindies great again? So yeah, so he's talking about vindicators, the Chaos Space Marines and Space Marine tanks. And Dwayne's a good friend of mine and someone who loves vindicators. He spent the last part of 7th edition trying to make them work with mixed to shithouse results. In 8th edition, Vindies have been thrown a kind of bone of sorts, but they still have many issues. The first real bone they're being given is the loss of hull points and the vehicle damage table, a massive boon for them. As literally the worst fucking thing ever was getting 1 douchebag with a plasma pistol who shoots you. He gets a penetrating hit and weapon destroyed. And oh boy, I've now got my expensive Rhino with no transport capacity. Fuck me, that was the dumbest shit ever. Secondly, it's toughness 8. which is huge. It's actually a massive boon. The jump from 7 to 8 is gigantic. But the downside is its main gun is only D3 shots or D6 first units with 5 or more models. The profile is respectable with strength 10, -3 and D6 damage, but it suffers from one of my pet hates. Weapon profiles with 2 random elements. So theoretically you can get 6 shots and get 6 wounds and they fail all their saves and then you roll all 1s on your 6 dice. Or you can get 1 shot which goes through and wounds and gets a 6 on the damage and you've done either 1 shot or 6 shots, you've got the same result. So it's very hard to plot and to bank on what damage this unit is going to perform for you. Another big issue is the range. 24 inches is piss poor, which gets compounded by the fact that Vindus do not ignore the penalty for moving and shooting heavy weapons, meaning that you will pretty much always be moving turn 1 and hitting on a 4+, which is how long you should expect them to last in a game. The things that are good about them is, like I said, T8 and also their stratagem. Linebreaker Bombardment is a monster of a thing if you can pull it off. The issue is it's really, really, really hard to make work. It's got so many criteria to meet that it's a bit silly. Now, if I was looking to make Vindus work, I'm not sure I can make them great again, but if I was looking to make them work, and I would not be focusing on trying to make these things killy. I wouldn't be focusing on their damage output. I'd be focusing on the fact that if I take 3 of them for that Linebreaker Bombardment, my opponent needs to kill them. So I'm leveraging their threat level to make them a target priority number 1 for my opponent. And knowing what your opponent needs to target first gives you a lot of power at the start of a game. So knowing that, hide the shit out of them. Put them out of line of sight. Put them out of range of your opponent's heavy hitters, his anti-tank. Because they're toughness 8, it needs anti-tank weapons to kill them. They're not going to go down to strength 4, and they're barely going to take a scratch from strength 5 unless you've got 100 shots. So you hold them back and you hold them like the sword of Damocles as like a looming threat over your opponent. So you take 3 in a gun line and then you have a scary as fuck 24-inch deterrent for your opponent. If they were to deep strike in a couple of like squads of Death Company and they charge your scout screen, they're fucked. You rock up and you linebreaker bombard them, 3d3 automatic mortal wounds, bam, units are gone, absolutely gone. But you're not focusing on that. You're not banking on that. You're banking on the fact that your opponent is shooting themselves over the fact that could have fallen on them and just wipe out a huge chunk of their army. So to wrap it up, due to their range and variable damage, they aren't good offensive units. But with some clever thinking and the right list, they can be half-decent defensive units. When I kind of put this concept to a friend of mine named Mr. Martin, he summed up this concept pretty well. And he said, distraction vindicators. For those of you who know the concept of distraction Carnifex, same shit, just vindicators. Alright, moving on. List review. First one for today. Hey mate, love the podcast. Here's a list I'd like your thoughts on. I'm not a big competitive player, haven't played too much in 8th edition, but planning on playing more. Just wanting your thoughts on this list and how to improve it. Most of the time, when I make a list, I tend to look at aesthetic and fluff choices more than how competitive they are. A guard brigade attachment with an super heavy auxiliary using Vestroyan Doctrine, so +6 inches to all heavy and rapid fire weapons. The idea of the army is to overwhelm my opponent with firepower, lots of las guns, and I've got 22 heavy bolters from my units, along with the tanks. I'll be keeping the engine seer near one of my tanks, and run the vets in the chimeras as well as the rough riders to deal with enemy armor. Keep the characters near the command squad and the Ogryn bodyguards. The Basilisks can do what they do and stay in the back providing fire support, while the Hellhound and the Banewolf run forward. Bulgrins depend on my opponent's army and will either hang back and provide countercharge or deploy up the front and walk up with the rest of the threatening units. So, like, if you didn't catch on, he's got a Vestroyan guard army and he's got a brigade detachment and a super heavy auxiliary. So, starting off with the brigade detachment, he has a company commander with a Grand Strategist Warlord trait and the heirloom, so the relic of Kurov's Aquila, which means he'll be getting command points back on a 5+, whether he spends them or your opponent spends them. He's got a Lord Commissar with a Power Sword stock. He's got a Primaris Psyker. He says he's going to be taking Gaze of the Emperor and Mental Fortitude. Then he's got 6 infantry squads, 3 of them with a Flamer and a Voxcaster, and then the other 3 also have a Flamer and Voxcaster, but plus a heavy bolter as well. Then for elites, he's got 3 Bulgrins, all with Bulgrin Mauls and Slab Shields. Got a command squad with a Medipack, a Regimental Standard, a Plasma Gun, and a Voxcaster. He's got an Ogryn Bodyguard with a Slab Shield, and he's also going to be paying for a second relic, which is the Death Mask of Olanius. Then he's got a Tech Priest Engine Seer. Plus, onto that, he's got 2 units of veterans, each one with 3 melter guns. For fast attack, he's got 2 armored sentinels with plasma cannons. He's got a hellhound with a heavy flamer. He's got a bane wolf with a hull heavy bolter. Then he's got 8 rough riders with 2 melter guns. For heavy support, he's got a basilisk. He's got 3 heavy bolters in a weapons team. He has a Malkador defender, which is a forward world option, and is a fucking amazing model. And then he's got 2 chimeras with heavy bolters and multi lasers. And then he's got a super heavy auxiliary with a Akurian pattern Stormhammer, which is the Forge World Baneblade, and it comes with 6 heavy bolters on the sides, which is what he's chosen to take. Okay, and so this is from a gentleman named Stosh, and he's a good friend of mine, and he does a painting commission service, which I'll be plugging at some point. So firstly, it's a fun list. I love a guard brigade. There is nothing fluffier in this world to me than a guard brigade. It is exactly how guards should play. It's so fucking cool. He's got amazing unit choices. Both the Malkador and the Stormhammer are incredible models and will look so good in his paint scheme because he's like I said, he's a shit hot painter. Vostroya is the best choice for your units, and he's done well to get the most out of the trait by spamming those heavy bolters. Going from 36 to 42 inch range on those heavy bolters is a huge jump and massively effective. Also, the Stormhammer is an incredible option for the Vostroyan stratagem. Giving that guy +1 to hit is a huge buff to it. Because he's got so many guns, you get so much mileage out of it. The Ogryn Bodyguard, if you guys don't know, so the slab shield that an Ogryn Bulgrin or an Ogryn Bodyguard can take gives you +2 to your save, and the relic he's taken on his Ogryn Bodyguard is the Death Mask of Alanius, which gives you a 4++ invulnerable save. So if you see where I'm going here, he's got a 2+ invulnerable save because he's got +2 to his save. So he's fucking legit and is an absolute terror for your opponent when it runs in tandem with those Bulgrins, or it's just and being defensive for you. So here are some changes. I dropped the command squad. Sorry, I know aesthetically it's amazing, but it does sweet fuck all for you now, and it will just give away an easy kill point. The same goes for the Lord Commissar. You've got so many command points free to you, you should be able to mitigate the majority of your morale issues. So you've got the guard stratagem for taking 1 morale check on 1d3 instead of 1d6. Plus you've got the 2 CP one from the rulebook, and you'll have a chance to get all those command points back when you spend them. So you should be just throwing away like candy to keep your guys on the board. Furthermore, you have so many Voss casters in there that you could just remove them and buy another commander and just buy more orders who can just walk around with your dudes and give them buffs and give them orders. I would still leave the Voxcaster in each unit, but it's rare that I ever actually purchase it. I just think aesthetically a guard unit doesn't look like a guard unit, doesn't look complete unless there's a dude screaming down a mic at somebody. I just think it makes it look like a guard unit. So, but in my armies, I rarely buy a Voxcaster, but I'll always have the model in there. So far, we have dropped the Voxcasters, the Lord Commissar, and the Command Squad. With those points, you buy another company commander, plus a platoon commander, and then next you remove the multi-laser and the heavy bolter from each of the chimeras, and you replace them with double heavy flamers. Lastly, you get yourself another Primaris Psyker. Okay, and sorry, this is one last thing I just thought up then. So you've got your heavy flamer on the Hellhound, and the Banewolf has the heavy bolter. I'd switch those two around. The heavy flamer complements the Banewolf better because both weapons have the same range, whereas the Hellhound can stay 16 inches away and fire both of its weapons. So I'd switch those around if I was you. By putting all those flamers on the chimeras, so you just swapped out the multi-laser and heavy bolter for 2 heavy flamers, you create a really nice aggressive kind of spear tip of the 2 Hellhound variants, the 2 chimeras, the Rough Riders, and you chuck those guys on a flank and just charge them up there. No one wants to charge you because you've got heavy flamers and flamers everywhere. And with that much armor advancing on people, it will force some bad decisions on them. And that is before you unload with the 8 melter guns you're going to be packing. Big props for choosing the Stormhammer. It's the best all-round Baneblade variant in my opinion. I got onto it pretty quick because it's super cheap compared to its brothers. And I jumped onto it in the Index, so before the Guard Codex came out. In the Guard Codex, like before the other Baneblades got dropped in points and got better main weapons and all of those other things. The Stormhammer was so much better than them because it was about 200 points cheaper. Plus it had 2 main guns. Having those 2 primary weapons and being able to customize this. So if you haven't seen it, it's got like broadsides on it, like a battleship. It's got six slots, and you can interchange any or all of them for whatever you want. You can take heavy flamers, multi-lasers, las cannons, or heavy bolters. if it's extremely versatile. And if you ever get the itch to put it with all las cannons and then get yourself a Trojan support vehicle, so it's got 7 las cannon shots plus its twin battle cannon plus its main cannon, you will never be disappointed ever. I can tell you from experience, that thing is incredible. So now that we've talked about those, so I ended up adding in an extra Primaris Psyker. By having 2, you can take one with Night Shroud and one with Psychic Barrier. The second spell I usually save for Mental Fortitude, and that's another way you can mitigate any morale issues that you have. So what I'd be doing with those 6 infantry squads, the ones with the heavy bolters that you're keeping back and probably using to bubble wrap things, I'd be using CPs to join them together, and then I'd be putting Mental Fortitude on them every turn. So then you eventually have a blob of 30 guys that are fearless, probably sitting in cover and pushing back any aggressive units. And then you got those other 3 with just the flamers moving out to get mid-board and stuff. So yes, Dosh, I hope that helped. And of course, with that second Primaris Psyker, that enables you to make that either the Malcador Defender. Oh, I didn't talk about the Malcador. Shit, it's so cool. So think about this. You got to what happens when you get a Malcador, basic like Malcador chassis, which comes with a Demolisher cannon, and then you just stick a fucking bunker on the top. That's the Malcador Defender. It's got like 7 heavy bolters just sticking out of it at all ankles. It's an amazing looking thing. It's just so guard-esque. Like, what's the most convenient way to get 7 heavy bolters on the thing? Oh, just chuck a bunker on top of a tank. It's just awesome. So yes, Dosh, I hope that helped. I hope that was some insights into guard. And yeah, all the best, man. I love a guard brigade. I think it's the best thing ever, and you're a top bloke for doing it. Just by default. You could be an absolute arsehole in real life, but if you're playing a guard brigade, you're a good bloke. There's no other way about it. All right, on to the second list today is from Adam Ray, and he asks, "Hey Adam, do you think this would hold up at Terracon?" He has a Grey Knights battalion, and for his HQ he has a Grand Master and Nemesis Dread Knight getup, baby carrier, and he has a Great Hammer, a Gatling Silencer, and a Heavy Psy Cannon. He also has a Teleporter. He has another Grand Master in the same Dread Knight armor with a Gatling Silencer, Heavy Psy Cannon, and a Teleporter. But this guy just has fists. Then he has troops. He has 3 strike squads, just 5 mans, no upgrades. Then for transports, he has 3 Vortimer pattern Razorbacks. So if you guys don't know what that is a forge-wheeled Razorback. It has a twin Psy Cannon on it instead of twin Heavy Bolter or whatever they come with stock. For elites, he has 2 Doomglaive Dreadnoughts, and so those are Venerable Dreadnoughts, but they have a Heavy Psy Cannon with them, and they have this special glaive combat weapon, which is pretty hot. And then he has a Venerable Dreadnought with 2 twin autocannons. For fast attack, he then has 10 Interceptors. Almost said Inceptors then, that's how close these words were all getting together. 10 Interceptors with all falchions. My notes, I like the list. It's fast, it's pretty tough, and it's kind of like mech'd up because it's essentially got like 8 vehicles in there. It has good amounts of fire. Amazing that he's got storm bolters everywhere. Lots of Psy Cannons to go around as well. The Grandmaster Dread Knights are solid, decent shooting, and good combat. And that's kind of what you should look at them like. They're a good all-round unit. They can do a bit of everything. They're not kind of probably need to either go down in points or go up in resilience. That toughness 6 is a real downer. They should probably go to toughness 7. But apart from that, yeah, they're kind of solid. Some of the issues here are with the Razorbacks. Unfortunately, I think regular Arsebacks are better than the Vortimer ones. They're 6 points cheaper for the Arsebacks. So if you don't know what Arseback is, it's a Razorback with twin assault cannon. And they are 6 points cheaper than the Vortimers, and they got 4 more shots, but 1 less strength. And I think overall, that kind of still makes them a little bit better than the twin Psy Cannons. So the twin Psy Cannons have 8 shots, it's strength 7, neg 1. For 6 points less, you can have 12 shots at strength 6, neg 1. And I think that's probably the better way to go. Mass shots is king in this edition. Maybe not king, maybe queen. So firstly, this is still a solid list. Strikes are one of the best troop choices out there. Very few OBSEC units can offer damage output in 3 phases of the game. So for those of you who don't know, a basic strike marine, your basic power armored dude in a Grey Knight army comes with a Stormbolter base. So that's either 2 or 4 shots. They also come with a force weapon, so which is strength user neg 3 d3 damage. And then they get to smite as well. So there's 3 phases of the game where you can get damage output from them. The issue is they're only as survivable as regular Marines, and you're paying a lot more than a regular Marine for them. So firstly, this list is a solid list, but it's trying to do regular Marine stuff with Grey Knights. Now, I'm not saying it won't work, but it's hard to do. Grey Knights are about 15, 20, 25% more expensive than their Space Marine brothers, but they're just as easy to kill, like I said. You need to, in a Grey Knight list, you need to maximize your alpha drop and your alpha strike. So I'd be pretty much deep striking everything in this army that you can. The great thing about this army is that there's enough firepower starting on the board that you can hold off dropping your strikes and your interceptors and all that stuff until you have cleared the chaff in the screens. Because you're starting there with those the Doomglaive Dreads and the Vortimer or the Arsebacks if you choose to take them. You've got plenty of fire to take out the Scout Squad, those Nurglings, those things that will stop you from deep striking in nice and close to get the maximum firepower out of those Stormbolters and to get in good charge range as well. 9-inch charge ranges. So now that I've said that, with not needing the Razorbacks for transport duty, I'd drop one of them and the Venerable Dread. With the points left over, I would turn your Interceptors into 2 squads of 5 and take 3 more strike teams. You still have the 2 Razorbacks, which will be 24 strength 6 shots if you choose to go that way, and you still have the 2 Doomglaives and 2 Dread Knights. So you still have plenty of fire on the board, but now instead of only having 25 infantry models on the board, you have 40. That's more Smites, that's more Stormbolters, that's more Alpha Strike drops, and that's more MSU for taking and holding objectives. Unfortunately, Grey Knights are struggling to find balance in their lists. It's important with how expensive their units are that you have enough bodies on the board to take a hit and still have options. At the start of the edition, like, strikes were very dominant. They were dropping down and they were doing a shitload of work. Now they've petered off over time. And now a lot of Grey Knight lists have just a couple of Grandmasters in the Dread Knight armor. And that's all. So 2 Supreme Command attachments filled out with that. And then Space Marine Scouts and some whatever other shit they can take. But it's usually a soup list. Going pure Grey Knights is fucking props to you, dude. Like, good on ya. But yeah, it comes with some challenges. And as long as you know what those are, you'll do better than most. Okay, that wraps that up. If you have a list that you would like reviewed out there, please send it through to gamingagainstthegrain1@gmail.com. So that's the number 1, not spelt out 1. And if you would like the list reviewed, please attach a paragraph describing what you want the list to do and what you want me to look at. Past that, if you have any listener questions, if you have any topics you'd like me to talk about or cover, send those through as well. Okay, moving on. We're up to the event I'm going to this weekend, which is called Lords of War. And it's held in Brisbane, and it's 5 games ITC ranked over 2 days. 2,000 points. I'm just going to briefly go over what the format is. All armies 2,000 points, got to be battle forged. Max of 3 detachments, no Forge World may be taken, and all Warlord traits, Psychic Powers, Relics, and Chapter Tactics, or Marks of Chaos, whatever, must be listed on your army list prior to submitting the list. And cannot be changed for the rest of the event. The Codex cutoff was the 23rd of February. Anything after that must not be used. And this event will be using the beta testing from the errata of the rulebook. So that means characters can't shield other characters, and Smite is the +1 every time you want to cast it. So there's not a shitload of serious note there, although Forge World is a big hit. Because I'm playing Space Marines from the Space Marine Codex, that limits me quite a bit. From some of the best units, the ones that add a lot of meat to the bone kind of come from Forge World, and a lot of the big plays that I have in store for my Marine army kind of start with some of the Forge World options, although not all of them do, as you'll see. Like the best example of this is Fire Raptors. There'll be no Fire Raptors at the event, and so that's a big nerf to some armies and a big buff to some others. So if you look at Eldar. If you look at the top best Eldar list you can make, there's not a single Forge World option there. There's not a single Forge World choice. Whereas you look at, like I said, the best Space Marine list at the moment is probably Guilliman and 3 Fire Raptors. As boring as it sounds, and it is boring, that's the best list. So this new Forge World thing does benefit some armies a shitload more than others. So the next one is the beta rules being in, which is no surprise. There might as well not be beta rules. It might as well just be in the rulebook now, because they're changes that everyone wanted to see, and so everyone's going to use them. But the big thing that tells me is that there's most likely not going to be any Collector's Assassins here, because Smite spam isn't a huge deal. There might be 1 or 2 around, but there certainly won't be 2 or 3 or whatever. They won't be on every Imperial table like there would be otherwise, or like they used to be. All traits and powers need to be chosen before the game. This makes things interesting. And it's pretty much saying that you're going to be locked into one playstyle at list creation. So the more points in the game telling you to make a list with 1 or 2 big synergies. And so that just pretty much says, hey, Plan out your list in advance. You can't chop and change. You can't customize on the fly. And I'm fine with that. Apart from that, you should know that this event has some soft score elements. It's got a sports score and a paint score, but they're only worth 30 points each, so they're not even worth half of what battle is worth. So it's pretty negligible, but they're both worth about a win each, so not too bad there, and still worth investing in if you can. So now I'm going to cover the list I'm taking to this event. So this is my army for Lords of War, and it starts with a battalion. And of course, it's Black Templars, baby. So I'm taking Helbrecht. And then I've got a lieutenant who's just stock, just mastercrafted bolter and a power sword. Then I've got my troops choices. I've got 2 5-man Crusader squads, and each one has a plasma gun, a combi plasma, and get this, a heavy grav cannon. Then I've got 2 other 5-man Crusader squads with just a heavy bolter. I'm taking 10 Stern Guard in my elites. I've got a Land Raider Crusader with extra Storm Bolter. Then I've got a Thunderfire Cannon and 2 drop pods. And so that rounds out the battalion. Then I'm taking a Spearhead, and in there is a captain in Terminator armor with Thunderhammer Storm Shield, and then 3 Predators with autocannons, heavy bolters, and a Hunter Killer missile each. Okay, so interesting, isn't it? It's far from good, but I don't know. It's good from far, I guess, with the Predators. So I'm going to explain my unit choices. So this army is not 100% optimized by any stretch. It's the natural progression from what my arc list was that I took to a 1350 event 2 months ago, and it's been what I envisioned it growing into from that army. So when I made that 1350 army, I wanted to grow it into something that resembled what this is. The idea of this list is to have layered threats, like I talked about, I think was the last podcast or the one before. Layered threats, close, medium, and long, which is something I try and cover. When I'm trying to learn a list, I want to get those 3 things in there because it'll give me a good idea of what's worth investing in the future, which is another topic I'll be covering, which is part of what this list is. I have decent Alpha Strike in the 2 drop pods, one with its essentially anti-multi-wound models with the 4 plasma guns and 2 heavy grav. Now, the heavy grav is a pure experiment. I know they're probably going to be garbage, but I'm kind of just ticking boxes here and knocking off things in my head. Because on paper, they look like a 4-shot non-overcharged plasma gun. So, yeah, then that's not great, but it's not shit either. And let me tell you, they can't be fucking worse than multi-melters. Multi-melters have got to be the worst, or possibly second worst, unit and war gear option I have ever taken. It's between them and the Bag of Dicks Devil Dog. One of them is the worst unit I've ever taken in my life. And so when those 2 units come down, the 2 in the drop pods, they can take care of elite units, and then they are comboed with the Stern Guard, who are the jack of all trades and essentially can go after pretty much any target I need them to. Past that, they are things I can use to spread out across the board and extend my influence and scoring ability. They will be complemented by the Terminator Captain, who will deep strike to give one or both of them rerolls, depending on which one I need. Like if I need to get reroll 1s on these plasma guns because I have to overcharge them, he'll go next to them. But if any other option suits me, he'll be going with the Stern Guard. And past that, he's a good combat deterrent. I'll be placing him so that hopefully no matter where they try and charge that unit I'm giving a buff to, he's going to be able to intervene. And it's just kind of a scary unit. I'm not expecting too much from him, and the only reason I'm taking him with Terminator armor and Thunderhammer Storm Shield instead of like a jump pack and Teeth of Terror is because that's the model I have at the moment. For mid-range threats, so that was covering my close-range threats. For mid-range threats, I have the Land Raider. All its weapons function at 24 inches or closer. It's not ideal in this list, but it's going to be good at keeping my drops down and hopefully create some pressure from my opponent. I plan to keep all the characters in there and the 2 units of 5-man, the 2 5-man Crusaders with the heavy bolters. Alternatively, the heavy bolter squads are there for shitty bubble wrap until I get some recon squads to use as scouts, or I figure out some other way of doing that. And they're there to bubble wrap from the heavy stuff because I'm expecting Death Guard drop bombs, I'm expecting Alpha Legion Zerkers, I'm expecting all sorts of nasties that can come at me turn 1. Once again, then neither of those choices are ideal. 5-man Crusaders with the heavy bolter each is not great. It's a decent use for the Hellfire stratagem, which is kind of the only reason I gave him heavy bolters. And the Land Raider is probably going to be a liability, but I'm working with what I got at the moment. Lastly is the big experiment for this event, and I'm truly looking forward to see if this play is worth investing in, and that play is the kill shot stratagem. For those of you who don't know, Killshot is a 1 CP stratagem for Space Marines that gives 3 Predators +1 damage on all their weapons and +1 to wound when targeting vehicles or monsters. So that's huge, guys. Like 1 CP for that much of a buff is massive. Now, I've kept those Preds as cheap as I could, but still got the tools to do what I want them to do. So I didn't take any las cannons. That's because I 101% expect them to die, or one of them to die turn 1. And you need 3 of them to be there for that stratagem to go off. So I didn't want to overinvest in them, you see. I wanted to kind of toe the line between what's the cheapest investment I can make to get the most out of them, because I don't expect them to be there past shooting like once or twice. If they shoot twice with that Killshot stratagem, I'll be over the moon. So they have 2 heavy bolters each, which are pretty legit when you give them +1 to wound and 2 damage. So they'll always be wounding on a 4+, because I don't think I'm going to be facing anything with toughness 10. So they're always wounding on a 4+. And the autocannon gives a good amount of shots at a consistent damage that is not variable, which appeals to me a lot. Lastly, I've given each of them a hunter killer missile. Seeing as I only need 1 turn out of them to get their points back for these dudes, and past that turn 1, I expect to lose the ability to trigger the stratagem. The hunter killer's there to double down and make sure they get their job done. These guys will be coupled with Helbrecht for 4 rerolls to hit, and the lieutenant for reroll 1s to wound. Further, building into that is that I have given the Storm of Fire Warlord trait to that lieutenant, so every 6 to wound is an extra rend. So if you look at my list, you might notice a few things. I've built in several ways to utilize stratagems. I have the Sternguard stratagem, the Thunderfire stratagem, the Hellfire stratagem, and the Killshot stratagem. And truly, if I'm honest, this army and this event is just to see which of these is worth my time in the future. As this is a competitive event, I'll probably get a good understanding of what directions I want to go in the future. I'm expecting to get stomped. I'm not expecting to win this. I've no delusions about the strength of my army list. It's got some teeth. It's got some good options, but none of it is as good as it can be. And I'm going to be going out there playing armies that are as good as they can be. So, yeah, under no delusions there. So this just some basic goals for what I want to get out of this list, and what I want to get out of this event. I don't believe I have enough experience with Black Templars, and that this list is optimized enough to expect me to win, like I just said, but I'm hoping to break even. If I get 2 wins, 2 losses and a draw, or better, I will be very happy. Like, if I get 2 wins, 2 losses and a draw, I'll be satisfied walking away from this. And that's my benchmark. That's what I want to hit. Anything better than that is gravy, is just cherry on top. So that's the goal for this event, guys. And let's hope I can hit it, eh? Now, moving on to our final topic for today, which is starting with a view to win. And so this is a topic I like a lot. And this is some of the things you can do at the start of a game to set yourself up for a win. And so this topic, I'm just going to cover the pre-game stuff, the stuff that happens in a game before turn 1 begins. And one of those first ones is something you need to do. You need to ask for your opponent's army list. Every game, even if it's a mirror match and they're taking exactly the same army as you, do it anyway. When you're looking at their list, here are 4 things to look for. And if you're super hardcore, here are 4 things to write down on another piece of paper. The first one is how many command points they have. Look at their list and check their detachments. Then check for if they have any characters that give extra CPs, or if they've got characters or warlord traits that give them back CPs. There's only 6, I think there's only 6 characters in the game that I know of that give command points, to just give you them. And I think that's Gilliman, Creed, Abaddon, Azrael, and Fateweaver. And as of today, some leaks I read this morning, Imhotep, the Stormlord from Necrons, will give you 1 as well. So those are the characters that will give you command points just for you having them in your list. And then have a look for any warlord traits, anything else that can give you command points back. The second thing to look at on their list is relics. If they have not got them listed, this is where you ask them what they're taking, what they do, and what, if you can and you feel like it, you ask them, why did you take that? Like, what do you expect that to do for you? Do exactly the same. This is exactly the same process for their psychic powers. Thirdly, is look for the synergies in their list. If they have Yvrain, you know they're going to make a play for Soul Burst. If they have Gilliman, you can expect shooting units to make use of his rerolls. Write these down too. If you need, write down something like Soul Burst is the play, or he will probably castle if he's running Gilliman. Things like that. Things will just prompt you later when we get through this process. Now, the fourth thing is to count the number of drops your opponent has. How many units they have in their army. Keep in mind transports if possible, and this is purely to inform you about your chances of going first or second. Something to write down. If your list, rocking up to a competitive game, you should know how many drops you have in your list straight away. And feel free to write down how many they've got. If you've got 11 and they've got 12, you write that down. So then it's really important who deploys first and who deploys last, because it's very important. And this is going to inform you about your chances of going first or second. And it adds important information to the next stage, which is objective placement. And there's a huge thing to know that I still see people getting wrong. If you are playing a game that has player-placed objectives and you are placing the first objective, the only safe place to put your first objective is in the exact middle of the board. This is due to the person who places the last objective getting to roll for deployment zones and pick sides. So if you have 6 objectives in your game and you have 3 and you place the first one, and let's say you place it 12 inches away from a corner, your opponent can then take their time and place all 3 of their objectives in close proximity to that one. And because it's in a corner, no matter what deployment map you roll up, they're going to get to pick to control that corner. And just so you know, guys, I have and still win games because people don't know this. They will regularly... Oh shit, so I won an event at the middle of 2017 because in my last game, my opponent placed his first objective where he expected himself to deploy in the middle of a Dawn of War deployment. I then placed my 3 objectives, 12 inches to either side of it, and then 12 inches in front. And then I got to pick that side when we got our deployments, and I placed an entire guard gun line on 4 objectives. There was no way he was going to dig me off that. But if those objectives had been spread out, it's a completely different game. If I have to move all my guard everywhere and I can't just defensively bubble wrap my tanks and everything like that and just sit there all game playing a shooting phase, I probably don't do so well in that game. So the next thing to note at this time is the info you have on your opponent's list. You need to make this relevant now. And it's the reason you wrote down shit like, he will probably castle. And so it's to prompt you during your objective placement. If you have a suspicion your opponent will castle up, or you believe the opposite, this should affect where you put your objectives. If they are castling, place your objectives outside your deployment zones, or in clear line of sight without cover. This is to confound their strategy if you get the choice of table sides. So if you get the choice, you give them the side with shitty objectives, and none of them in the deployment zone. So they can't castle up on anything, and they have to spread out, and watch their strategy crumble. If they have an army that needs to spread out, get those objectives and stick them close together, so they're easier for you to defend, and your opponent can't make good use of their movement to spread out. And so hopefully they get bogged down in a war of attrition with you. Because by default, if you've got a really fast army, it's probably not that survivable. Next is your deployment, your actual deployment. And I've covered deployment a lot in other podcasts. And by this stage, when you're about to drop your first unit, you've already decided what map you're playing and what side you have. And with this info now, and what the info you have about your opponent's list, you have probably the biggest and most influential decision of the game to make. Do I deploy offensively or defensively? And as I've said in other podcasts, every army needs to be able to do both. Unless you're a super duper crazy Alpha Strike army, in which case you're good to go, who cares? You're a special snowflake, good for you. After this, take a minute before you drop any units to decide which way you're going to go. It's fucking important. Now stick to that plan like crazy. As soon as you drop that first unit in a defensive or offensive way, all the other units have to follow that. If you do half and half, you fucked it up, and you won't play. Your game will feel disjointed. When you're dropping units, there's another thing to keep in mind. Always pay attention to the ranges on your opponent's guns. And the last point is every game that is something I do in every single game that I play. After deployment is finished and you've seen the board, you know who's going first or second, take another minute, look over the board, see where every objective is, see where every unit is, every unit you have, every unit that your opponent has. Now imagine what you need that board to look like at the end of the game for you to win by 1 point. Now answer yourself a few questions. What needs to die to achieve this? Next, what units do I need to have left at the end of the game to achieve this? And lastly, what objectives do I need to be on to achieve this? That's it, guys. Those are the things that I do before a game to set myself up for a win. Some of those are really basic. Some of those I think are a bit more advanced, like that last one. Like literally visualize what the end game, what the last turn of the game needs to look like for you to win by 1 point. And that'll set you up in your head, in your actions, and just try and make every action to see that vision through, to make it like you want it to look at the end of the game. So that's it. Yeah, there are some things I pretty much do every game. I plan to win, which is every game I play pretty much. I plan to win every game, unless I'm playing in a battle report or teaching a new player. I plan to win just every game I go to. And I think just about everybody does. Like if you call yourself a tournament player or somebody who attends tournaments, you never walk into a game going, I really don't mind. I wouldn't mind losing. I think that's good. Very rarely have I ever heard that. And look, none of these are hard and fast rules. None of these are things you have to adhere to. These are just some suggestions, just some shit I've picked up. And if you're not a super hardcore dude, like, don't feel free to not write stuff down. Like, feel free to write down if you want. If you're afraid you'll forget it, or you kind of think you'll lose focus on what you need to do, writing it down is a good way to keep yourself on point. Or if it's an obscure play that your opponent's doing, or something you've never experienced before, like, write it down. And if he tells you, this is a crazy thing that I've cooked up, I'm going to see if it works, write that shit down. If you're experiencing like someone's alpha strike from an army you've never played before, or you've never seen or heard from before, write that shit down. It'll just keep you on point and keep you remembering what to focus on. And after a while of running through this kind of process, you'll totally not need to write anything down. You'll just remember these steps. They'll just become second nature. They'll just become things you do at the start of a game. So yeah, I hope that helped, guys. I hope that was what you guys thought that topic was going to be. I didn't really... That's what I wanted to talk about with that. I want to talk about my starter game process, because I have a lot of people who've asked me, how do you set yourself up for a win? How do you play with winning in mind? And mostly it's because every game I play, I'm envisioning what I want the board to look like at the end, and always trying to strive to meet that goal. And naturally, that fucking changes. That changes a lot. But starting with that vision in mind is a huge help to me. Okay, so closing thoughts for today's episode. That's it, guys. That's it for this one. So closing thoughts. I'm off to experiment and learn what is worth investing in to go to the next level with this army. I'm really hoping to break even with my games, so 2 wins, 2 losses and a draw would be just fine. And I'd like to thank Dwayne and Mark for their questions, and Adam and Stosh for their lists. I really hope I was helpful, guys. Thanks again for all the feedback and support, guys. It's fucking amazing. I can't believe how much support I've gotten and how much feedback. Like, it's great. Thank you so much. And try those steps out before your next game. If they're helpful at all, awesome. If they just confuse the shit out of you, just do what works for you. Doesn't matter. So yeah, thanks, guys, and I'll see you next time. Bye.